Hello, and thank you for joining us today, 2 days before the anniversary of the January 6th Capitol attack, to talk about why data privacy is absolutely necessary to addressing Facebook's harmful business practices, ensuring election integrity, and preventing another attack by extremists. We're joined by Senator Ron Wyden, Fight for the Future campaigner Erica Dara, Access Now U.S. policy analyst Will Marie Escoto, Open Media Campaigns Director, Matt Hatfield. And at the end, we'll open it up to questions. And in the meantime, feel free to post in the chat, and that goes for Zoom and YouTube as well. Today, we're delivering over 24,000 petition signatures from individuals and a letter signed by 70 human rights organizations calling on Congress to pass a strong data privacy law in order to address Facebook's data-fueled algorithm manipulation. Algorithmic manipulation is directly associated with the virality of election disinformation and the rise of far-right extremism that led to the attack on the Capitol 1 year ago this week. To kick us off, I'm going to pass it to Senator Ron Wyden to start with our comments.
Thank you very much. And what an important fight to take on at the start of the new year. And so big thanks to Fight for the Future, Public Citizen, Access Now, and Open Media, because the work that you're doing to keep the hot light on Facebook's predatory use and abuse of Americans' personal information is hugely consequential. On January 6th, the whole world saw the failure of American institutions, from members of Congress who are willing to undermine our democracy for cheap political attention, to military, law enforcement, and intelligence leaders that did not take the threat seriously. And it put a magnifying glass on how Facebook is willing to coddle white nationalists, scammers, and anti-democratic right-wing figures for Mark Zuckerberg's personal profit. My view is the root cause of Facebook's toxic corporate behavior is the business model, because it's the business model that is built on hovering up private information from everybody in sight, and then is based on misusing it for profit. The whole reason it's profitable for Facebook to ignore the blight on its site is because it can harvest vast amounts of personal information without any limits on how it uses or shares that data. Now, there's no mystery about why Facebook is siding with shady data brokers, and I'm taking them on because they want to weaken online privacy protections even more. So as we start this new year, my own view is the first order of business in stopping Facebook is putting tough regulations on how Mark Zuckerberg's company can collect, share, and use our data, because that's the fuel that runs Facebook. That's the fuel that earns him billions. That's the fuel that harms our democracy. Facebook failed, so the record is clear, to protect hundreds of millions of users' data, their private data information in 2019. And they basically put it on a silver platter for hackers. Just imagine that. Users' private information out there, essentially within easy reach of hackers. It publicly touted privacy tools that turned out to be fake. Facebook collects far more personal information than most users realize and markets it to third parties its users have never heard of. The meager penalties that the FTC has just haven't stopped this behavior. And we know that markets have rewarded it. So it is past time for the Congress to constrain these practices. It's past time for a federal data privacy law, and that's what I have proposed with my Mind Your Own Business Act. Democrats in the Congress have shown strong support for consumer privacy protections, which is why my colleagues, Senator Cantwell, Senator Brown, and Representative Eshoo have all proposed tough, comprehensive privacy bills. These leaders and I all agree that a privacy law needs to put consumers in control of the collection and use of their personal information and give federal regulators the authority and resources that they need to actually enforce the law. And in my view, and it's the heart of my bill, privacy legislation should hold Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg accountable with steep corporate fines and the strongest criminal penalties ever for executives who lie to the government. So I'm proud today to accept your petition. While Facebook, Disney, Oracle, and other big corporations are out lobbying to write rules to their own advantage, I think all of us on this discussion understand the importance of hearing from the grassroots, because we know that political change doesn't start that often in Washington, D.C. and then trickle down. It's almost always grassroots up. And that's what it's going to take to have tech policy that actually puts users first. So reining in Facebook's abuses starts at the grassroots. And when I went to school, I went on a basketball scholarship. My mother would always say, make sure you're running with the right crowd. And I'm looking out at all of you, and I know I'm running with the right crowd this morning, because in terms of reining in Facebook's abuses that you all are going to discuss, that I've touched on this morning, it starts at the grassroots. And let's get this job done in 2022. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so next up, we've got Fight for the Future campaigner Erica Dara with some comments.
Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. So Facebook has shown that manipulating users' news feeds can influence emotions for over a decade. And in 2016, the platform played a well-documented role in the US election. Then in 2017, data surpassed oil as the world's most valuable commodity. Social media platforms have capitalized on this by harvesting individuals' data in order to influence behavior through advertising, with devastating consequences for mental health, human rights, public health, and election integrity. Facebook's business model has evolved into social engineering via psychological warfare, and it's crucial that lawmakers disarm its data weapon by cutting off its supply of user data. When Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen testified before Congress in October, she named algorithmic manipulation as the main source of power for platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Algorithmic manipulation is only possible with invasive and copious personal data on individual people harvested via mass surveillance. Platforms weaponize user data to fuel algorithmic manipulation in order to maximize ad sales, not just for products, but for ideas, often basing disinformation and conspiracy theories. Election disinformation on Facebook played a pivotal role in the attack on the Capitol, and its virality would not have been possible without data-fueled algorithmic manipulation. Algorithmic manipulation is a threat to our democracy and election integrity because it intensifies the far-right extremism associated with election disinformation and the January 6th attacks. We cannot restructure society's relationship with social media or protect civil and human rights without ending the exploitation and manipulation that currently underpins our digital lives. If Congress is serious about addressing the harms of social media, holding big tech accountable, and protecting our democracy, they must prioritize data privacy legislation in time to protect the integrity of the midterm elections. Thank you.
Joe, you're muted. I don't think we can hear you.
Sorry, thank you about that. So I was just saying, thank you, Erica, and thank you, Senator Wyden, and thank you, Will-Marie, for letting me know that I was muted. Next up, we have Will-Marie Escoto, who's a U.S. policy analyst at Access Now.
Thank you, Joe, and thanks everyone for tuning in. So my name is Wilmaria Escoto, and I'm on the policy team for Access Now, and we're working with several other organizations to hold social media companies accountable, particularly Facebook, for knowingly violating civil rights and human rights online. So how many whistleblowers is it going to take for US Congress to rein in Silicon Valley? We need a federal data privacy law in the United States, and we need it now. Our data is harvested and weaponized against us, fueling algorithmic discrimination against the most marginalized communities and violating our right to privacy. People are fed up, and the tens of thousands of petition signatures urging Congress to pass a data protection law are a rallying cry for action. So more data, more problems. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, they're using algorithms to make decisions for us. They're stripping away our choice and our autonomy. These algorithms decide what we see and what we don't see. And the goal is to keep us first scrolling as long as possible and exploiting our data, including data from children, to maximize their profits. Without a meaningful data protection regulation, these corporations' manipulative business models will undermine democracy and harm people worldwide. And as we're advocating for here, and the petition puts forth really the most straightforward path for lawmakers to reduce Facebook's harm and any social media company's harm is to ban the data harvesting and surveillance practices that fuel harmful algorithms and to pass a federal data privacy law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to remind some of the journalists here, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop a question in the chat. Same goes to YouTube. So just as we're going through this, please feel free, and we'll get to a Q&A at the end. So next up, we have the Public Citizen Executive Vice President, Lisa Gilbert.
Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks, everyone. As he said, I'm Lisa Gilbert, Executive VP at Public Citizen. Public Citizen has over 500,000 members nationwide, and our mission is to take on corporate power. As you all know, as we've discussed here for way too long, Facebook and other digital platforms have pursued profit while neglecting to prevent and remedy all the serious harms that they're causing our children, marginalized communities, and democracy. So today, in addition to supporting the really important petition discussed by the other speakers, Public Citizen also joined with 25 other civil society groups from across numerous sectors, civil rights groups, women's groups, consumer groups, and more. And we sent a letter to Congress demanding that they act swiftly to hold the platforms, including Facebook, accountable. And as we approach the one-year mark of the January 6th insurrection, we are asking Congress to show the world that it has a commitment to transparent social media ecosystems that protect our digital civil rights and enhance instead of hinder democracy. The Facebook papers brought into clear relief the fact that Facebook knows that its products are dangerous to teens and women and many others, but chooses to continue its damaging practices rather than sacrifice its profits. And just today, a new Washington Post and ProPublica story showed that Facebook groups swelled with at least 650,000 posts attacking the legitimacy of Joe Biden's victory between Election Day and January 6th, with many calling for executions or other political violence, and Facebook did nothing. Public Citizen has been around for 50 years, so we know that change doesn't happen unless we keep the pressure up. These petitions and our letter are sending a message. Facebook should not be allowed to violate our rights, risk our kids, and threaten our democracy. We have to show them that they are not above the law. The FTC should come for Facebook, the IRS should come for Facebook, and Congress should update our privacy laws so that our rights are not sacrificed to line Mark Zuckerberg's pockets. We have to pass privacy legislation in 2022. We just cannot keep letting Facebook and other corporations violate our rights. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Next up, we have Matt Hatfield, who is Campaigns Director at Open Media.
Thanks. So Open Media is a grassroots group of about 350,000 individuals who work together to keep the internet accessible, open, and surveillance-free. And we've joined this campaign for one simple reason. Strong data privacy law is the most important fix we could be making to online platforms to defend democracy and to advance our rights. And yet right now, very few lawmakers are talking about it. Just about everyone across the political spectrum right now is worried about the rise of online misinformation and radicalization. But the conversation about what to do about it is stuck between people who want the government to ban a lot of online speech and people who want platforms to never regulate speech. And neither of these models work very well. It's very unsafe for democracy for the government to make really broad rules banning types of speech, but no platform can do no regulation of content. And every new online platform that thinks they're going to do no regulation figures that out really fast. We believe that strong data privacy law is the solution to this riddle. It would help break the misinformation cycle without giving the government control of online speech. So currently, it's incredibly lucrative to surveil ordinary people going about their everyday online lives. And the direct fruit of that surveillance is the personalized algorithmic loop of feed content. That loop is custom designed to give us content that pleases, frightens, or angers us individually, often all of those things at once. And that's the kind of emotional manipulation that Erica was talking about Facebook doing. It doesn't really matter to Facebook which emotion it drives. What matters is that it's driving an emotion and we stay engaged, we stay on the platform. The goal of keeping us on the platform is really about feeding more and more data that advertisers can use into the model. And the loop itself is the problem, and the loop is their business model. So truthfulness or whether the content we're consuming is good for us are not important to this model, and they can't really be easily shoehorned in. For most of us, of course, the feed just wastes our time, but for some of us, it drives growing radicalization and developing plainly false or extreme beliefs. We believe weak data privacy is what fundamentally lies behind this spiral. And if we pass strong data privacy law, we can address it. We'd also wanted to point out that the pervasive online surveillance model disempowers us individually and gives platforms unheard of power to decide what we see online. And because of how lucrative that data surveillance model is, it's really not imaginable for a major online platform to let us make our own choices about how we want our feeds to be constructed. We'll never see a major platform built around the welfare or needs of its users, so long as the surveillance platform model is so overwhelmingly successful. It's just too profitable to manipulate rather than empower us to make our own choices right now. And that's extraordinarily dangerous for the future of democracy. Strong data privacy law that bans the unrestricted collection and sale of our data won't fix the internet by itself. We also need to make platforms more transparent about how they operate to their users and to researchers. But passing strong nationwide data privacy law is an absolutely necessary first step. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Matt. So now I'd like to open up for a quick Q&A. So if any of the journalists on the call would like to ask a question, feel free. And yeah, if you want to post something in the chat, you're welcome to as well. Mariam Akesh posted a question. You're welcome to unmute and ask that if you'd like.
Yeah, I think my question came across okay, and Matt sort of already addressed it. It would be great if he could elaborate. I know that Senator Wyden and others penned letters regarding T-Mobile and other mobile operators sort of hoovering up people's data. And I wanted to get folks on the call to elaborate a little bit more on the link between these other players. You know, Facebook, obviously, as you guys have illustrated or talked about, is obviously a big one, but there are other players in the ecosystem, such as cloud service providers, you know, ISPs. Talk about how what that relationship is, and you know, the importance of involving those other players in comprehensive legislation. Thanks.
I can jump in and give an answer from our perspective if no one else is going to do so. I think the big telcos often sort of slide under the radar. We don't have a direct relationship with them in the way we do the online platforms, and some of their harms are more invisible. But in terms of violation of our privacy, they are as bad or worse than some of the major online platforms, and they absolutely need to be considered in a comprehensive data privacy law.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, guys. Do we have any other questions from anybody? And if not, yep, if not, I think we can close this out. I just want to close by saying, you know, that we are today, this event is to deliver 24,000 petition signatures from individuals and a letter signed by 70 human rights organizations calling on Congress to pass a strong data privacy law in order to address Facebook's data-fueled algorithmic manipulation. Thank you to all the people who spoke today, and I encourage listeners and people who are, just generally interested in this to head over to howtostopfacebook.org and add your name to the petition. And yeah, again, thank you to everybody that joined today. It's very appreciated, and yeah, see you all again later. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.